Assassinated in cold blood, the shocking death of Kenya's MP Ong'ondo, and the crisis of political violence in Africa. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, where we go beyond the headlines to reveal the truth behind the tragedy. I'm Abdul Karim Kargbo, born and raised in Africa. In the heart of Nairobi, bullets silenced a voice meant to speak for the people. The death of MP Charles Ong'ondo has stunned a nation and exposed deep cracks in Kenya's democracy. But this is not just Kenya's story, it's Africa's warning. A nation in shock, Kenya woke up to devastating news on Thursday, May 1st, 2025. Charles Ong'ondo, the Member of Parliament, MP, for Kasipul constituency in Homa Bay County, had been assassinated in cold blood the previous evening in Nairobi. The brazen murder near City Mortuary, as reported by the Standard and Daily Nation, has sent shockwaves through the political landscape, reigniting debates on electoral violence, the toxic nature of grassroots politics, and the continuing culture of impunity in Kenya's democratic evolution. While authorities have yet to apprehend suspects, the National Police Service has confirmed the crime was targeted and premeditated. The killing not only leaves a power vacuum in Kasipul, but also poses broader questions about political accountability, intra-party violence, and the resilience of state institutions in protecting elected officials and the democratic space. Unpacking the assassination, facts and theories. According to the police spokesperson Muchiri Nyaga, the attack was carried out by two unidentified men on a motorcycle, one of whom approached Ware's stationary car and opened fire at close range. Ware was rushed to Nairobi Hospital by his driver and another passenger, but was pronounced dead on arrival. Daily Nation, May 2nd, 2025. Eyewitnesses and video footage circulating online suggest the killing was executed with precision, indicating involvement by well-trained assailants or hired hitmen. These details have fueled widespread speculation that the motive may stem from deep-rooted political rivalries rather than random violence. While no official motive has been confirmed, local media reports and social media discussions, Citizen TV, Kenya, Twitter, May 2nd, 2025, point to a fierce struggle for the Homa Bay ODM chairmanship, a position Ware was allegedly campaigning for, which may have intensified hostilities with political adversaries. A divisive legacy, hero or tyrant. Charles Ong'ondo. Ware, who was serving his second term under the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, is remembered by some as a strong grassroots mobilizer and ally of Governor Gladys Wanga. However, his tenure was riddled with controversies. Allegations of sponsoring political goons, orchestrating intimidation campaigns, and his involvement in violent clashes have tainted his legacy. Earlier in 2025, several community members reportedly demanded his arrest following a spate of violent incidents during public events. A particularly disturbing episode involved the vandalization of a political opponent's vehicle during a funeral where Ware was present. These incidents, though never legally substantiated, created a climate of fear in Kasipul. The Star, Kenya, April 2025. The tension was so palpable that Ware himself claimed on multiple occasions that there were plans to eliminate him. Speaking at a public function earlier this year, he remarked, "There are people, politicians, who want to see me dead, but I fear no one except God." His assassination tragically lends weight to those words. A broader African context, political violence as a tool of control. Kenya is not alone in grappling with the scourge of political assassinations and intra-party violence. From Nigeria's volatile party primaries to South Africa's political hit culture in KwaZulu-Natal to Sierra Leone's history of violence between party supporters, the trend is troubling. In South Africa, a Daily Maverick investigation in 2023 revealed that dozens of local councillors and political aspirants had been killed over party positions and tenders. In Nigeria, Party thuggery has led to countless deaths during election periods, especially in regions like Rivers and Lagos states. In this African wide context, the killing of MP were underscores a broader crisis. Democracy is often hollowed out at the grassroots level, where thuggery, coercion, and fear dictate political legitimacy more than policies or service delivery. This normalization of political violence often goes unpunished, sending a dangerous message that public office is not about accountability, but about power retention, by any means necessary, institutional accountability, and the limits of state protection. While Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, has called for a swift investigation and promised to table the findings in Parliament, Kenyans remain skeptical. Past high profile political murders, such as that of Jacob Juma in 2016, remain unresolved. The effectiveness of the Kenyan police in such cases has been under scrutiny for years. Corruption, political interference, and lack of forensic capacity often lead to botched investigations or total impunity. According to a 2022 report by Transparency International Kenya, over 70% of Kenyans believe that politically motivated crimes are rarely prosecuted due to interference by powerful actors. This undermines public trust and breeds a culture of silence and resignation. Forward-looking implications. What next for Kasipul and Kenya? The killing of MP where throws Kasipul constituency into political uncertainty. With tensions already high due to factional rivalries within the ODM party, a by-election, if and when it is called, could ignite further unrest if not handled with transparency and fairness. Moreover, this assassination is likely to intensify calls for internal reforms within political parties, particularly ODM, which has struggled with grassroots violence and lack of transparency in local nominations. ODM leader Raila Odinga, known for his reformist stance, will now face pressure to cleanse the party ranks and restore public confidence. At a national level, this tragedy should serve as a wake-up call to President William Ruto's administration and Kenya's security agencies. Political protection should not be a privilege reserved for cabinet ministers or governors, but a right guaranteed to all elected officials. Comparative reflections. What African leaders must learn. This assassination, like others across the continent, reflects the dark underbelly of electoral competition in Africa. Unless party structures are democratized and the rule of law is firmly applied to both ruling and opposition elites, Africa's democratic gains risk being reversed. The African Union and regional bodies like the East African Community, EAC, must take firmer stances on internal party democracy, political violence, and electoral reforms. Silence, as has often been the case, equates to complicity. Reactions from ODM leadership and national authorities. The assassination of MP Charles Ong'ondo has elicited immediate responses from both his Orange Democratic Movement, ODM party, and national political leaders. ODM leader Raila Odinga, in a televised address on Citizen TV Kenya, May 2, 2025, expressed deep sorrow over the murder and called it an attack on democratic freedom and a stain on our national conscience. He further demanded a high-level inquiry, adding that the ODM Secretariat would convene an emergency meeting to address rising tensions within Homa Bay County and review internal security measures for party officials. Odinga's statement, while solemn, also hinted at internal party fractures. We must ask ourselves hard questions, he said. How did it come to this? Who benefits from Honchewer's death? And what steps must we take to prevent another tragedy? The Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, speaking from Nyeri, condemned the killing and appealed for calm. This must not be politicized. Let the police do their work. No Kenyan should lose their life over power or politics. Yet, As is often the case in Kenya's polarized environment, statements like these are met with skepticism, especially in regions like Nyanza, where the government is perceived to be politically adversarial. Meanwhile, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki promised to assign a specialized task force to the investigation. He assured the public that Kenya's intelligence and forensic teams are already reviewing CCTV footage, gathering digital evidence, and interviewing key witnesses. However, critics argue that similar promises were made in prior high profile murders with little follow through. The Nation, May 2nd, 2025. The legal framework, gaps in protecting political figures. Under Kenya's constitution and the Elections Act, elected officials are not provided automatic, permanent personal security details unless they are cabinet ministers, governors, or in leadership positions in parliament. This has exposed MPs and MCAs, members of county assembly, to significant threats, particularly in regions with high political volatility. Calls are now growing for legislative amendments to broaden security coverage to vulnerable elected representatives. Human rights watchdog Kenya Human Rights Commission, KHRC, has reiterated its 2022 policy proposal urging Parliament to pass a political officeholder security and safety bill that would define minimum thresholds of protection, especially during campaign periods and party primaries. Dr. George Musamali, a security analyst and former police officer, told K24 News that the state's failure to anticipate or prevent politically targeted killings reflects a wider breakdown in intelligence gathering and a reactive rather than proactive approach to national security. The fact that were publicly expressed fear for his life and still wasn't provided any protection is damning. Community response in Homa Bay. Tensions mount. In Kasipul constituency and across Homa Bay County, the atmosphere is tense. Spontaneous protests erupted in Oyugis and Kosele towns shortly after news of the assassination spread. Youths, some donning ODM colors, blocked roads and lit tires, demanding justice and accusing rival political camps of orchestrating the murder. Community elders have called for restraint. Bishop Samuel Okeo of the Anglican Church in Kendu Bay warned during a televised sermon, "This is not the time to settle political scores with violence. We must mourn, reflect, and demand justice without descending into chaos." Nevertheless, the risk of retaliatory violence is high, particularly as factions within ODM prepare to jostle for control of the now vacant parliamentary seat. Residents fear that the by-election may become a battleground of revenge rather than a democratic contest. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, KNCHR, has called for the deployment of conflict mediators in the region and warned of inflammatory language spreading through social media platforms that could destabilize peace in the entire county. Comparative lessons: how other African nations have addressed political violence. To understand what Kenya can do differently, one must examine how other African countries have responded to similar crises. In Ghana, the assassination of MP Echo Kwanzaa Hayford in 2020 led to the swift introduction of the Security Enhancement for MPs Act, mandating armed police protection during official duties. The act, passed within 6 months, received bipartisan support as a national security imperative. In Rwanda, while the government has faced criticism for authoritarian control, its zero tolerance stance on violence within political parties has significantly reduced intra party killings. Strict enforcement of campaign conduct rules and early intelligence interventions have deterred assassination attempts. Sierra Leone, after years of politically motivated clashes between APC and SLPP supporters, established a multi-party dialogue forum, a space for rival politicians to resolve tensions non-violently. While not perfect, it has helped reduce political vendettas from escalating into bloodshed. Kenya must consider adapting such institutional solutions. A bipartisan task force involving Parliament, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, and civil society could create protocols that reduce political temperatures and protect both voters and leaders. A moment of reckoning, Kenya's democracy at a crossroads. The murder of Charles Ong'ondo is more than a tragic loss of life. It represents a fundamental failure of political leadership, law enforcement, and civic culture. The audacity of his assassination, carried out in the heart of the capital, challenges the state's monopoly on violence and casts a long shadow over the credibility of upcoming electoral processes. Civil society groups such as Uriah Trust and Mzalendo Watch have called for national dialogue on political reforms. They argue that Kenya's electoral system fosters winner-takes-all contests that incentivize violence, exclusion, and personal loyalty over merit. The task ahead is not just about solving a murder, but addressing the structural violence embedded in Kenya's political ecosystem, where every contest is a zero-sum game and where dissent often leads to death, not debate. ODM's internal crisis, a party at war with itself? The Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, one of Kenya's most influential political outfits, is now facing renewed scrutiny and internal strife in the wake of MP Ong'ondo Were's assassination. While the party has publicly mourned his death, insiders suggest a growing rift within its leadership in Homa Bay County and beyond. Was pushed to unseat existing county party leadership by contesting for the ODM Homa Bay chairmanship had made him a disruptive figure within internal structures. He was perceived by some as a power broker, trying to consolidate influence ahead of the 2027 general elections. His ambition threatened entrenched interests, raising questions about whether internal sabotage played a role in his death. According to a party strategist who spoke anonymously to The Standard, May 2, 2025, Han Ware was not just looking to climb within ODM, he was challenging an old guard that's reluctant to let go. He wanted to transform the power dynamics in Homa Bay, and some people saw that as a threat. This fracturing mirrors deeper issues in Kenya's political parties: lack of transparent internal elections, patronage networks, and political godfatherism. ODM, like many of its counterparts, has been accused of stifling internal democracy, leading to resentment and rebellion within its ranks. If left unaddressed, the assassination could be the flashpoint that triggers a wave of factionalism, defections, and street-level confrontations. Historical echoes, political assassinations in Kenya's troubled past. To understand the gravity of Ware's murder, it is essential to revisit Kenya's turbulent political history, littered with unsolved killings and enforced silences. In 1969, Tom Mboya, a charismatic Luo leader and Minister of Economic Planning, was gunned down on Moi Avenue in Nairobi. Despite initial arrests, the suspected masterminds were never prosecuted, and the case remains unresolved. His death, much like Ware's, was surrounded by claims of political betrayal and deep ethnic fault lines. In 1990, Dr. Robert Uko, then Minister of Foreign Affairs, was found murdered under mysterious circumstances, with investigations marred by political interference and contradictory reports. His death shook the nation but yielded no justice. Fast forward to 2017, Chris Mzando, the ICT manager at Kenya's Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, was tortured and killed days before the general election. Despite international outrage and forensic evidence, no one has been convicted. These historical precedents reveal a worrying pattern. Political assassinations in Kenya are often treated as isolated incidents rather than systemic failures of the security and justice apparatus. Investigations stall, Evidence disappears and perpetrators melt into obscurity, fueling a culture of impunity that emboldens future crimes. Digital misinformation and hate speech, a new battlefield. In the aftermath of Ware's death, social media has become both a tool for mourning and a weapon for misinformation. Graphic images, unverified claims, and tribal slurs have flooded platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Some users have circulated posts alleging that Ware's death was orchestrated by his political rivals, naming individuals without proof and stoking ethnic tensions. Others have shared archival videos of past violent incidents involving Ware, some manipulated or taken out of context, to justify the assassination or delegitimize his legacy. The National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, has issued warnings against incitement and urged social media platforms to cooperate in identifying and suspending accounts promoting hate. However, Kenya lacks a robust framework to regulate political speech online without infringing on free expression. This regulatory vacuum has created a space where digital propaganda can incite real-world violence. According to a 2023 report by Amnesty International Kenya, online hate speech in Kenya is often a prelude to physical violence, particularly in election years or during political crises. The assassination of Ware, occurring in a pre-election cycle buildup, could ignite localized violence unless digital narratives are managed with care and responsibility. What must be done? Strategic policy and security recommendations. To move forward constructively, Kenya must view this tragedy not as an isolated crime, but as a symptom of deeper structural weaknesses in political governance, institutional protection, and justice enforcement. 1. Institutional reform of political party governance. Kenya's political parties must be compelled by law to democratize internal operations. The Political Parties Act should be amended to require regular, independent audits of party primaries, internal elections, and conflict resolution mechanisms. This would prevent the buildup of factional tensions that often explode into violence. 2. Enhance security protocols for elected officials. All members of parliament, particularly those representing volatile regions, should be entitled to bodyguards or personal security under a restructured parliamentary security service. This would require budgetary realignment and collaboration with the National Intelligence Service to assess threats proactively. 3. A political assassination response unit, PRU. Kenya should consider establishing a dedicated multi-agency task force under the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI, that focuses exclusively on politically motivated crimes. This unit would include forensics experts, cybersecurity professionals, and human rights observers to ensure impartiality and speed in handling sensitive cases. 4. A digital peace and ethics code. Social media companies operating in Kenya should be engaged to enforce content moderation rules during politically sensitive periods. A national digital peace charter, drafted in collaboration with civil society and digital rights groups, could set norms for online political engagement, ensuring accountability without censorship. 5. A continental mechanism for monitoring political killings. At the African Union level, there is an urgent need for a regional monitoring framework to track political assassinations, share intelligence across borders, and pressure member states to act on unresolved cases. This mechanism could mirror the African Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, with regular scorecards and reviews. The human cost, psychological impact on Ware's family and constituents. While the political ripples of MP Charles Ong'ondo, Ware's assassination dominate the headlines, the emotional and psychological aftermath is being deeply felt by his immediate family and constituents, particularly in Kasipul constituency. His widow, Ruth Ware, speaking through tears during a vigil in Nairobi, described her late husband as a man who lived for his people and died in the line of service. She questioned the silence of political elites who had once stood with her husband. "We will not rest until we know who took him from us and why," she said, flanked by her children and close relatives. KTN News, May 3, 2025. Back in Kasipul, grief has turned into trauma for many residents. Community health workers report growing cases of anxiety, depression, and fear, especially among youth who had been aligned with Ware's political camp. The violence, uncertainty, and the graphic nature of his death have triggered widespread feelings of insecurity. Dr. Ann Owio, a trauma psychologist from Homa Bay County Referral Hospital, told the Star Kenya that many residents are dealing with invisible wounds. They fear speaking out, they fear retaliation, and most of all, they fear being forgotten. Grassroots Reflections, Voices from Youth and Women's Groups. In Oyugi's town and surrounding areas, local youth leaders and women's groups have begun organizing forums and prayer meetings, not just to mourn, but to rebuild a fractured community. They believe the tragedy presents an opportunity to change how politics is practiced in their region. Samuel Uma, a youth activist and founder of the Kasipul Youth for Peace movement, said during a forum at Kosale Community Hall, "We've lost leaders before, but we've never paused to ask why the same cycle continues. This is our turning point. We must reject violence and demand issue-based politics." Women's groups, often sidelined during major political decisions, are also emerging as critical voices in the call for reconciliation. Mama Diang Women's Network, led by community organizer Jane Achieng, has launched a peace initiative titled From Tears to Change, aimed at engaging women, widows, and mothers in the constituency to promote healing, dialogue, and civic education. It's not just men who die in these conflicts. We lose husbands, sons, and peace of mind, said Achieng. This time, we women are not going to be silent spectators. These initiatives signal that while the top-tier political environment remains tense and reactive, the grassroots level is actively seeking proactive, people-centered solutions to prevent further bloodshed. Regional and diaspora responses, a continental tragedy. Beyond Kenya's borders, reactions from East African leaders and the Kenyan diaspora have underscored the broader significance of Ware's assassination. The tragedy has been framed not only as a domestic issue, but as part of a worrying pattern of violent suppression of political actors across Africa. Uganda's opposition leader Bobi Wine, in a tweet on May 3rd, stated, "Our thoughts are with the people of Kenya. The killing of MP must not go unanswered. Africa must stop normalizing violence as part of politics." Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan also conveyed her condolences through the East African Community Secretariat, urging Kenyan authorities to protect the democratic space and ensure the rule of law prevails. Meanwhile, the Kenyan diaspora in the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States has mobilized vigils and online petitions calling for an independent international investigation into the murder. A statement from the Kenyan Diaspora Peace Coalition noted, "Our leaders cannot continue to be killed with impunity. This must be a line drawn in the sand." This continental and global response highlights how increasingly interconnected African political narratives have become. The assassination of one MP in Nairobi is no longer seen in isolation. It is linked to the larger struggle for democratic integrity and state accountability across Africa. The legacy debate, who was Charles Ong'ondo were and who comes next? In death, as in life, Charles Ong'ondo were remains a polarizing figure. For his supporters, he was a bold, fearless advocate for youth employment, education, and local development. During his 2 parliamentary terms, he is credited with pushing for bursary programs and small-scale infrastructure improvements in Oyugis and Kachieng. But his critics remember him as a political strongman who allegedly thrived on division, intimidation, and brute force. His alleged involvement in mobilizing youth gangs, though never proven in court, continues to shadow his record. This dual image complicates efforts to construct a unifying legacy. His death now leaves a significant leadership vacuum in Kasipul. Already, political contenders are jostling to fill the seat, sparking fears that the by-election could devolve into a replay of the same violent winner-takes-all competition that contributed to Ware's fate. ODM insiders suggest that the party is considering fielding a compromise candidate, likely a non-aligned professional or technocrat, to cool tensions and restore confidence. However, local power brokers are unlikely to step aside easily. The Kenya Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, has 90 days to organize a by-election once the seat is officially declared vacant. Civil society organizations are calling for preemptive peace-building campaigns and electoral code of conduct enforcement to ensure that the by-election does not spiral into further violence. The role of religious and cultural leaders reweaving the fabric of peace. In the wake of MP Charles Ong'ondo. Ware's assassination, religious institutions and cultural leaders in Homa Bay County have stepped forward as crucial actors in community healing and conflict prevention. Recognizing the volatility of the moment, they are attempting to restore social cohesion and avert potential retaliatory violence. Bishop Patrick Lumumba of the Homa Bay Interfaith Council convened a multi-denominational prayer service, calling on leaders and citizens alike to reject vengeance and embrace peace. We must condemn this evil act not just with words, but by changing how we do politics, he said. The church is not neutral in the face of injustice. We must be a voice for truth, accountability, and healing. Traditional leaders, including Luo Council of Elders Chairman Willis Opio Otondi, have also played a mediating role. Speaking at a press conference in Kendu Bay, he warned politicians against exploiting Ware's death for personal or tribal gain. Luo culture values life and justice. We must not desecrate the memory of our son with bloodshed. Let dialogue guide our next steps. These efforts reflect the unique moral authority religious and cultural leaders possess in African communities, especially in moments of grief and uncertainty. If mobilized effectively, their influence could play a decisive role in calming tensions ahead of the anticipated by-election and national political realignments. Parliamentary response. From condolences to calls for reform. In Nairobi, the National Assembly held a special session on May 5, 2025 to honor the memory of MP Ware. Speaker Moses Wetangula led a minute of silence and described the killing as a disgraceful stain on our democracy. But beyond mourning, the debate quickly shifted to matters of justice, accountability, and electoral safety. Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah tabled a motion calling for the immediate establishment of a select parliamentary committee on political assassinations and violence against legislators. The committee, if approved, would investigate not just Ware's death, but previous unsolved killings of political actors, and recommend legislative safeguards. Meanwhile, Minority Whip Junaid Mohammed pressed for deeper reforms to protect MPs and address toxic political environments in certain regions. He said, "This is not just about one man. It is about a system that tolerates and sometimes rewards violence. Parliament must act, or history will repeat itself." The Kenya Parliamentary Journalists Association, KPJA, also released a statement urging for transparency in the investigation and protection for whistleblowers who might provide evidence related to the murder. This renewed legislative energy, if sustained, could lead to policy breakthroughs, particularly around MP security, hate speech regulation, and political accountability. However, observers caution that such momentum has previously fizzled out after the media spotlight fades. 2027 general elections, a warning sign for Kenya's electoral future. The murder of Charles Ong'ondo Ware, an ODM MP seeking greater influence within his party, has injected early tremors into Kenya's 2027 general election cycle. The incident illustrates how political competition, especially within dominant parties like ODM and UDA, can become a source of lethal confrontation long before official campaigns begin. Kenya's past elections, 2007, 2013, and 2017, have all featured violence at various levels. The 2007 post-election crisis left over 1,000 people dead. Although recent polls have been more peaceful, analysts warn that the underlying causes of electoral violence, ethnic mobilization, impunity, and exclusionary politics remain unaddressed. Dr. Roslyn Akombi, former IEBC commissioner now working with the United Nations, tweeted, "Where's assassination is not an isolated event. It is a symptom of electoral decay. Without bold reforms, 2027 may bring back ghosts we thought we had buried." Already, political strategists are bracing for more confrontations as both ODM and UDA seek to consolidate grassroots power, whereas death could discourage reformist candidates from contesting for fear of violent retaliation, thereby shrinking the political space and reinforcing the dominance of entrenched political barons. Toward a regional and global electoral peace framework. The implications of Ware's assassination transcend Kenya. As political violence resurfaces in parts of Africa, from the targeted killings in Nigeria and the coups in the Sahel to repression in Zimbabwe, there's a growing need for a continent-wide electoral peace and accountability framework. The African Union, through its African Governance Architecture, AGA, must move beyond observer missions to proactive conflict prevention. A new AU protocol on electoral safety and accountability, backed by binding commitments, could establish baseline standards for candidate protection, forensic investigation support, and swift sanctions for politically linked violence. Similarly, regional blocs like IJAD and the East African Community must incorporate political violence monitoring into their early warning systems. Kenya, as a key regional hub, could take the lead in proposing such a framework, both to redeem its democratic credentials and to shape continental norms. International partners, including the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, IFES, should support capacity building efforts to train security forces, civil society, and electoral bodies in electoral violence mitigation. Ultimately, the responsibility lies with national leaders to move from rhetoric to results. The media's role between truth-telling and sensationalism. As the story of MP Charles Ong'ondo, Ware's assassination unfolded, Kenya's mainstream and digital media outlets scrambled to cover every angle, from crime scene details to political reactions. While the media has played a crucial role in informing the public, it has also been criticized for amplifying speculation and inadvertently fueling tension. Prominent media houses like Citizen TV, The Standard, and Daily Nation quickly published eyewitness accounts and official police statements, contributing to early public awareness and pressure for accountability. Talk shows and primetime debates featured politicians, analysts, and clergy discussing the implications of the killing, thereby keeping the issue at the forefront of national consciousness. However, social media channels and some fringe blogs took a different turn. Unverified videos allegedly showing Ware's last moments were circulated widely, along with graphic images of the crime scene and inflammatory narratives implicating specific individuals, most without credible evidence. In particular, tribal undertones in several posts raise concerns about rekindling ethnic hostilities, especially between political camps in Nyanza. Media watchdog. Article 19 Eastern Africa has called for journalistic restraint, urging outlets to avoid reporting that prejudices ongoing investigations or compromises community cohesion. While the media has a duty to expose the truth, it must not become a tool for political witch hunts or disinformation, said Mugambi Kiai, the regional director. This moment demands a balance between investigative journalism and ethical responsibility. Kenya's media must invest more in fact checking, source verification, and trauma sensitive reporting, especially in cases involving political violence. The danger of martyr politics, glorification versus accountability. As emotions swell, some political figures and supporters have begun framing Ware's death as a martyrdom in the struggle for justice and reform. Public murals, vigils, and commemorative speeches have elevated him to near sainthood in certain narratives, particularly within ODM strongholds. ODM youth groups in Kisumu and Oyugis have already proposed naming local roads and community centers after the late MP. A hashtag campaign, Jack were the martyr, has been trending online, highlighting his achievements and pledging to continue his mission. While commemoration is natural, analysts warn that this narrative risks overshadowing the complex legacy of Ware's political life. He was a divisive figure, accused of using intimidation against rivals, even while championing youth and development causes. Glorifying him uncritically may entrench a dangerous political culture where martyrdom becomes a tool for consolidating power or suppressing dissent. Dr. Nyanchama Mokaya, a political sociologist at the University of Nairobi, notes, in many African democracies, assassinated leaders are posthumously sanitized, but the truth must include both their achievements and their failures. Otherwise, we risk turning politics into a game of martyr creation rather than service and accountability. A more productive approach would be to honor Ware's life by pushing for the reforms he talked about, but also investigating the full spectrum of his political conduct and what it says about the broader system. Governance fallout in Homa Bay and Luo politics. The political landscape in Homa Bay County and the larger Luo region is undergoing seismic shifts, whereas death leaves not only a parliamentary vacancy, but also disrupts a delicate balance of power within ODM's grassroots structures. Governor Gladys Wanga, who had publicly aligned with Ware on various development initiatives, now faces pressure to hold her coalition together amid rising political ambitions and possible factional rebellion. Already, local ODM delegates are holding parallel meetings to discuss potential successors, some of whom are reported to be mobilizing youth ahead of the by-election. This infighting may weaken ODM's grip on the region, opening the door for rival parties such as the United Democratic Alliance, UDA, and Movement for Democracy and Growth, MDG, to make inroads. Should national security agencies fail to manage the transition peacefully, Kasipul could become a flashpoint for wider regional instability. Moreover, the assassination has reawakened tensions over Luo political succession beyond Homa Bay. Were was considered part of a younger generation of leaders who aspired to reshape Luo political identity post Raila Odinga. His death may delay that generational transition and reinforce the perception that reform-minded politicians are targets for elimination. Reconciling justice, memory, and reform in Kenya's democracy. Kenya now stands at a difficult crossroads. The assassination of MP Charles Ong'ondo, Ware is not just another violent episode in the country's history, it is a mirror reflecting the unresolved contradictions of a democracy still struggling to deliver peace, justice, and accountability. The challenge ahead is multidimensional. Justice must be pursued not as an act of vengeance, but as a demonstration of state credibility. Arrests must be made, the masterminds exposed, and the process must be transparent and independent. Memory must be preserved in a way that honors the complexity of Ware's life, celebrating his service while learning from his shortcomings. This honest reckoning is essential for civic maturity. Reform must be grounded in the realities of Kenya's political culture. Structural changes, ranging from party primaries to electoral violence prevention, must be institutionalized, not personalized around individual tragedies, whereas assassination could be a turning point, but only if Kenya, as a nation, confronts the deeper rot that enables such killings and resolves to change. A regional roundup, political assassinations, and the crisis of impunity in Africa. The assassination of Charles Ong'ondo is neither unique to Kenya nor an isolated political anomaly. Across Africa, political killings, often unresolved, have formed a dark undercurrent beneath the continent's democratic aspirations. These acts not only rob nations of human capital, but also undermine public trust in political transitions and justice systems. In South Africa, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, over 90 politicians, many of them local councillors, have been assassinated since 2016, often linked to intra-party rivalries within the African National Congress, ANC. Investigations, when conducted, are slow or inconclusive. In Nigeria, the murder of gubernatorial aspirants, local government chairpersons, and activists during electoral cycles has become disturbingly common. In states like Rivers and Anambra, political violence is now normalized as part of the struggle for dominance. Cameroon has seen the disappearance and murder of opposition figures in the Anglophone regions as the state uses anti-terrorism laws to suppress dissent, often with no accountability. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have witnessed military takeovers where political actors and activists have been killed, disappeared, or jailed, often with regional silence. Even in Ethiopia, assassinations such as that of singer-activist Hachalu Hundessa in 2020 have triggered widespread unrest and exposed ethnic political fissures that destabilize entire regions. This pattern reveals a deeper structural malaise. African political systems, even under democratic constitutions, often lack the institutional strength, legal independence, and civic resilience needed to protect political actors and ordinary citizens alike from politically motivated violence. Actionable policy priorities for Kenya and the continent. In the spirit of turning tragedy into transformation, the assassination of MP must galvanize African policymakers and civil society around the following core priorities. 1. Create legal frameworks for political protection. Governments must enact and enforce laws that ensure all political candidates, especially during pre-election and intra-party contests, are provided with adequate security and protection under national security guidelines. 2. Establish independent political crimes units. A multi-agency team, independent of political interference, should be mandated to investigate and prosecute politically motivated killings. Such units must have access to intelligence, technology, and forensic capacity, and must operate under parliamentary and judicial oversight. 3. Institutionalize early warning systems. Through cooperation with the African Union's Continental Early Warning System, CEWS, and regional blocs like IGAD and ECOWAS, countries should identify early signs of political escalation and act preventively. 4. Strengthen political party accountability legislation must require internal party elections, nomination processes, and dispute resolution mechanisms to be monitored by independent electoral or judicial bodies. Political parties must be held accountable for harboring or protecting violent actors within their ranks. 5. Develop a Pan-African Charter on Electoral Security. A binding African Union protocol should commit member states to minimum standards for electoral security, accountability for political killings, and protection of whistleblowers and investigative journalists. Advice to African leaders: lead by conscience, not control. To the leaders of Africa, presidents, party heads, governors, and ministers, this moment calls for honest self-reflection. Leadership is not just about winning elections or maintaining power. It is about building trust, nurturing peace, and preserving life. Power without justice is tyranny. Authority without accountability is violence cloaked in legitimacy. The brutal murder of Charles Ong'ondo offers a solemn warning. When violence becomes a language of politics, democracy becomes its first victim. Leaders must commit to dismantling the systems of fear, coercion, and impunity that allow such killings to occur. Speak up against violence, even when it is within your own ranks. Demand investigations, even when it is politically inconvenient. Embrace reform, even when it threatens your grip on power. Above all, value the sanctity of human life above the seduction of political dominance. A call for justice, memory, and democratic renewal. The assassination of MP Charles Ong'ondo, where is a tragedy rooted not only in bullets, but in the failure of systems, political, judicial, and ethical. His life, as complex and controversial as it was, represents the story of many African leaders who rise in hope and fall to violence. This article has traced his journey, the reactions it provoked, and the structural lessons it surfaces, not just for Kenya, but for all of Africa. From grassroots healing to regional policy reform, from media responsibility to party accountability, the road ahead demands courage, clarity, and collective resolve. The time for silence has passed. The time for reform is now. Let this be the last assassination that teaches us the same lesson. Key messages and takeaways. Charles Ong'ondo, whose assassination reflects the urgent need for political reform, party accountability, and security for public officials. Kenya's history of unresolved political murders underscores systemic impunity that erodes democratic trust. African political parties must institutionalize nonviolent mechanisms for internal competition and succession. Governments must strengthen investigative institutions and legal frameworks to deter political violence. A continental framework for electoral safety and political accountability is necessary to prevent Africa-wide democratic backsliding. Justice, memory, and reform must go hand in hand to honor the lives lost and prevent future tragedies. Thank you for watching The Bold African Voice, BAV. Political violence is not a destiny. It is a failure of leadership, law, and conscience. If Africa must rise, we must protect those who dare to lead. If you believe in justice, truth, and a stronger Africa, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Together, we speak boldly because Africa deserves better. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a voice that matters.